Hello.
Hello.
So glad to be here as a follow up to our 21st century policing conversations with a domestic violence emphasis. So we're glad to be here today.
Yes, thank you guys for having us. We're looking forward to this conversation, a candid conversation about domestic violence and what the Newport News Police Department is doing to address this issue in our city.
And feel free to post in the chat if you have any questions. We're happy to answer and just bring awareness to this issue. My name is Cheryl Chavers, domestic violence specialist with the Newport News Police Department.
And I am Nisha Himes, Domestic Violence Outreach Liaison with the Newport News Police Department.
So, Nisha, we just want to tell everyone
Mm-hmm.
about this domestic violence program. We're very fortunate that we believe that we're the only uh, victim advocates within law enforcement
Mm-hmm.
within this area, this region. So it's really a privilege to be able to serve in this capacity and bring awareness to domestic violence and be able to help victims partner with law enforcement and our community partners as well as we address this issue.
So you want to tell everyone about yourself?
Oh, just a little bit, a little
Okay.
background.
Okay.
So I have spent the majority of my professional career working for the great city of Newport News. It's been a wonderful experience for the last 18 years working for the Newport News Department of Human Services. And in that capacity, I worked with children who had experienced horrific abuse and neglect, working with their families to stabilize them and ensure that these children were safe. And so for many years, I spent time um, doing prevention. So, whatever strategies we needed to put into place to address housing issues, abuse issues, mental health issues, substance abuse issues, whatever it was that the family may be facing during that time of crisis, I spent some time working with them to prevent those children from coming into foster care. And then I switched hats a little bit and worked in the foster care realm. So, children who unfortunately had to be removed from their family situation due to risk levels that were high, trying to stabilize those families, working with relatives to place these children in a safe environment and help children experience permanency. And so that was definitely life changing for me, working with families, going into homes, going to court as well, and just partnering with our community partners, collaborating with them to provide resources to help families. And so now in this capacity, I get to work specifically in the population of domestic violence. And so I'm excited about this approach and just to be able to bring hope to someone who is in need.
Okay. Oh, Cheryl's pretty awesome if you guys don't know already. So I am Nisha. I'm the Domestic Violence Outreach Liaison. Like Cheryl, I'm just very excited to be working in this capacity within the department to be able to assist individuals and families experiencing domestic violence, to also assist with outreach, provide education, and all of the things needed to target this truly damaging epidemic. I am very passionate about domestic violence. It has a personal reason for me. I'm a survivor myself. I was in a very toxic and violent relationship for years, and there was a point where I never thought I would get out of that situation. I never knew that there were resources in the community that could assist someone like me experiencing such horrific abuse. So, when I left that relationship, I decided to start speaking out about it. And it eventually led me to obtain a position with a local prosecutor's office. And I was a domestic violence victim witness advocate. And I did that for some years. And then prior to joining the prior to joining the Newport News Police Department, I did that with the Norfolk Commonwealth Attorney's Office, and I was at the Chesapeake Commonwealth Attorney's Office. So it was just really helpful to see the other side of the fence, to see the other side of domestic violence. When you're a victim, you think that you're alone in that. You think that no one understands what you're going through. So to be here in this capacity, working with law enforcement to teach them how to engage with victims of domestic violence, to teach them how to be trauma informed, what domestic violence looks like outside of physical abuse. It's just really an honor to be here. So, to tell you a little bit about our program,
Yeah. So we first came on board April 2020,
mhm.
Nisha and I, and we were trying to do an assessment of, okay, we're here now. What is it that we can do to bring awareness to this issue? And we came up with this multi-pronged approach to addressing it. And one, we want to be victim centered. So that is working with victims. That's what we spend a large portion of our time doing, is education, talking about domestic violence, because you'd be surprised at how many people don't even realize that they're in this type of relationship. So we provide some education about the patterns as it relates to domestic violence, the cycle of abuse, and then linking them with resources in the community. So we really appreciate that. And just being trauma informed. The majority of the victims that we've spoken to or speak to, they've experienced trauma because of the abuse. So we want to make sure that we listen to them without judgment, that we're someone that they can vent to and process what they're going through. And so that victim-centered approach is key to what we're going to be doing here.
Right. We also work hand in hand with the officers. We oftentimes have officers call us while they're on scene saying, you know, I have this victim here. She needs help. He needs help. What kind of resources can we offer? What advice should I give to them? We have assisted with doing home visits, you know, for those who need assistance as far as just processing what they're going through, being able to provide that one-on-one interaction. We have done hospital visits, all within COVID-friendly and social distancing guidelines, but just to be able to offer that support to let them know that someone cares and someone within the police department. As Cheryl mentioned earlier, we don't know of another program that's doing this where you have civilian advocates within the police department to be able to contact a victim the same day of an incident or the next day and say, hey, are you okay? Do you need anything? What kind of resources can we connect you with? It really goes a long way. We've come up with literature for officers to give out to those that they come across during their calls for service. We call it a little pocket pamphlet. It's something no bigger than a driver's license. And it has information as far as safety planning tips, resources, quick resources to get shelter, to obtain a protective order. It has the signs of abuse. Again, it extends way past physical abuse. There's digital abuse, financial abuse, religious abuse, things like that. So just these little quick snapshots into what domestic violence looks like, because as Cheryl mentioned, a lot of times people don't know that they're in a domestic violence situation. When you've learned to function in dysfunction, it's your normal. So that's, you know, part of our goal is to just bring that awareness, not just to those who are experiencing the abuse, but also those in the community who can do something about it. Our hope is to help reform and, you know, build that relationship between law enforcement and those who are impacted by domestic violence, as well as our community.
Yeah, and speaking of our community, they are integral to us addressing this issue, because before someone even calls the police, you can best believe that they've experienced a lot of abuse within their situation before they even reach out to the police. And so they may reach out to a friend, they may reach out to a coworker, they may reach out to their faith-based leader. And so it's really important for us to bring awareness to this issue so that we can equip community members with strategies to be able to help people who are experiencing abuse, so that they know what resources are out there in the community that they can link someone with, so they can know that it's really important that when you're speaking with someone who's going through abuse, to listen to them, not with judgment, and not to be condescending or put them down or say things like, you know, well, I would never let that happen to me, because nobody gets into a relationship and says, hey, that's what I want.
Right.
I want to be denigrated. I want to be put down. I want to be physically abused. Nobody ever goes into a relationship expecting that to happen. And so we want to make sure that the community is informed about that, and that we can get rid of some of the misconceptions as it relates to domestic abuse. So our community partners are very important. We are so fortunate in this area to have Transitions Family Violence Services. They're a phenomenal organization that provides comprehensive services to individuals who've experienced abuse. And so when we're talking with victims, we're letting them know, hey, there is hope, there is help, there's an organization that can help you. They're going to walk with you through this process to help you be able to rebuild your life. And we're not just talking with women, we're also talking with men as well, because contrary to popular belief, men can also be victims of domestic violence.
Right, 1 in 4 men to be exact, and that's just those who report it. And our goal is to awareness by any means necessary. And just to show you, domestic violence has no face. And we're so fortunate to be based out of the Special Victims Unit and headquarters. So we speak with people constantly. We come in, our morning is full of reading reports from the night before, going through those reports and not just tackling the ones where it's obvious signs of domestic violence, but ones where there are undertones of domestic violence. Because one of the ways we can stop domestic violence is if we prevent it from before it even escalates. So we can review a report where it's a vehicle theft, and it may be that the estranged spouse took the victim's car and just left with the car and made it so that the victim is not able to leave the house. Maybe they took their keys, maybe they took their wallet. So while some may say, okay, well, that's not really domestic violence, it's no one put their hands on each other, no one called each other any names, but we know that domestic violence includes control, manipulation, isolation, things like that. So one of the ways that you can control your victim is to prevent them from leaving the house. That's a red flag for us. So we are able to contact the person and say, listen, is this a pattern? Is this something that normally happens? Do you understand that there are resources that can help you? Then that's a big part of our job, just to shed light on domestic violence before it escalates to that point. And as Cheryl mentioned, it doesn't just happen to women, it affects men, it affects the LGBTQ community, it's in the underserved populations, those with language barriers. I mean, our job here is to educate, but also connect to the resources in the community that can assist with all different types of domestic violence and all different demographics of it.
Yeah. And so we also get an opportunity to partner with the Newport News Commonwealth Attorney's Office. They have victim witness advocates there. And so what we like to do is what we call a warm handoff,
Right.
where we are informing the victim who's experienced domestic violence about the process. You've just experienced a crime, because domestic violence, when someone assaults you, that is a crime. And so we want to let them know that they're going to have to going through the court process, and a victim witness advocate will help them navigate through all of that. So we partner with them. And then we have community organizations, grassroots organizations, who are doing something about domestic violence. So we want to partner with them as well, just to be able to bring as much awareness as possible. Because what we know about domestic violence is that very rarely does it decrease on its own. It escalates, it progresses. And so we feel like if we can get in on the front end, provide that education that Ms. Himes spoke about, so that someone can realize, wow, this is a really bad situation. What can I do to get out of it, so that I can diminish the risk of lethality for that person's life. Exactly. So we also will be working in terms of our data analysis. We are fortunate here at headquarters to have a crime analyst that's assigned to our team, who will help us analyze, is there an area in the Newport News region that has a lot of domestic violence, that maybe we need to do more outreach in that particular area to bring awareness to this issue. And so analyzing the data is very critical part of what we're going to be doing.
And I just like to point out, it sounds really cool to say that we have a crime analyst. I just like to throw that in. But with this being Domestic Violence Awareness Month, so October was designated as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. It originally started as a day of unity back in the 1980s. And then in, I believe it was 1989, U.S. Congress signed it as a month of awareness, where they united advocates and those in the community who were working to fight against domestic violence, to bring awareness, to show that, it's a problem, and it's a problem that needs to be addressed. So this Domestic Violence Awareness Month, we have so many things planned. We have a whole calendar list of events that we are just excited about. Everything from, we had our Light Up DV.
Let's talk about that a little bit.
Let's talk about Light Up DV.
Yeah.
Okay,
I think it was, so that was on October the 1st.
Yes.
Okay, so we wanted to start off the month with a bang. Right. But it was also a time of reflection for us, because it's sad that we even had to have National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Just to sit with that for a moment is really sad. So it was a time of reflection to recognize that there are people who are living intimate partner terror in their homes 365 days a year,
Correct.
24/7. And so whatever we can do to address that, to diminish that, that's what we're going to do. And so if we can spotlight it, like we did with Light Up headquarters, where we had a purple.
It's like illuminated. So you guys, you drive by the building at night and you just see this purple building. And you're just like, oh, that's cool, you know? So the building is purple. We have a big sign up front that says enough is enough, because enough is enough. We were fortunate to have several survivors and advocates come out, and just to honor them and honor their fight on different sides of the fence. You know, we were able to give a moment of silence for those whose lives have been lost due to domestic violence, and those still fighting to survive every single day. So it was just a really special event for us, being our first Domestic Violence Awareness Month here with the department, but also as advocates passionate for the cause and as a survivor. You know, it was just really inspiring just to see us all standing together in our purple and just saying, okay, you know, we are united in this front to eradicate this as much as possible.
Yeah.
So it's about our PSAs.
Well, I
We
was
got a lot
also
of
going to
stuff,
say
guys.
when
We
we
got-
had when we had the opening event, we also had an officer come and speak.
Yes.
And that was very important, because one of the most dangerous calls that an officer can respond to is a domestic related call.
Right.
And so we were fortunate to have Officer Cespedes come and speak and give his perspective from being in the field and going on these domestic related calls and how that has impacted him. And we're grateful because the officers that we work with, they're phenomenal in terms of their engagement with victims, the resources that they're able to provide for them. And it was really good for him to come and give his perspective. And then I see that Dana Robinson, I love the video you put out. So at the Light Up event, we shared the Enough is Enough video.
Yes,
You want to talk a little bit about that?
The Enough is Enough video is a PSA. It's very diverse, and that includes people from all different backgrounds. It's women, men, children, and we're just all debunking the myths and the stereotypes as it relates to domestic violence. So oftentimes, one of the questions we hear first and foremost, which I'm not a fan of this question, but it's why didn't she or why didn't he just leave? You know what I mean? So we put that in the PSA because it's important to address it. We need to stop victim blaming. We address the fact that it affects children, that it affects teenagers, that it affects men, that it affects older people, younger people. You know, again, domestic violence has no face. So it's just really exciting to see it all come together in this PSA with so many people from around the city leaders, city officials, survivors, advocates just come together to put out this very important message. We also have another PSA that will be coming out soon.
Very excited about that. It's our faith-based public service announcement. And so basically we knew because of social distancing and COVID-19 that we couldn't get out into places of worship the way we would have wanted to. You know, during the month of October, it would have been nice to be able to go into these faith-based congregations and just highlight domestic violence. Well, we knew we couldn't do that, but thankfully technology's on our side, and we partnered with 2 pastors from in the community, and they were a part of this public service announcement, basically telling people like, look, this also happens in faith-based communities. And we can't turn a blind eye to it. And faith-based communities, they need to be a place of refuge, a place of sanctuary for those who are experiencing it. And so we're really excited about that. Later on in the month, that will be broadcast on our social media platforms, but we're sending this PSA out to our faith-based leaders, asking them to share this video in their congregations during their time of worship. So we're hoping that that will be a great success, and that they will continue to share and continue to share, and more people will be aware and informed of strategies to address domestic violence.
We also have some big, pretty purple boxes placed all throughout the city. We had a survivor wrap party right before October, and it was where survivors and advocates came together, and law enforcement as well, and we all wrapped and decorated boxes, these huge boxes that have been placed throughout different locations throughout the city, and which we are collecting toiletries to donate at the end of the month to Transitions Family Violence Services. Oftentimes you'll find people living in the shelters, you know, you think of what you need on a daily basis. It goes beyond food and a roof over your head and things like that, but just to be able to have shampoo for your hair, body wash, socks are a big thing, children's medicine. So we are collecting these items and we are just really excited for the turnout that it's going to be, just to be able to hand all of these items all over to transitions, to be able to assist the families that they're supporting throughout this time in their life. One of those boxes will be placed at Downing Gross Cultural Arts Center, and just in time for our open mic, which is on Saturday at 6 p.m., 6 to 9 p.m. So we're really excited about that. Art is very therapeutic as a form of release, especially to those who have been impacted by trauma. So I say, if you'd like to attend, please get there early. Mask will be required. Sign that list. We like to hear a poem or two from you, and bring your toiletry donation. And that's just some of the things we have planned for Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Can I share one more thing?
She can share one more thing. Yeah.
We also had the opportunity to do a multidisciplinary panel for Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and that was phenomenal in that we were able to get a content expert who has done a lot of research on domestic violence. We were able to have Vice Mayor Dr. Sandra Cherry be a part of it as well, and we had a batterer's intervention clinician and a survivor of domestic violence be a part of the panel, and we were able to ask them very candid questions about it. And so we're going to have that released later on at the end of the month. And it's so interesting, when we're talking with victim survivors, we also need to look at offenders as well, and seeing what can we do to address this issue so we can stop domestic violence in the first place. And so that area is something that's really important that we need to look at a little bit further. But if you would just stay tuned for that multidisciplinary panel, you're going to hear from that batterer's intervention specialist, and she'll be able to shed some light on that phenomenon as well.
Right. And we were just joking when we said one last thing. This is it for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. We had a walk with Chief last week where we walked in Cottage Grove community and was able to just speak with the citizens in that area about domestic violence. We handed out little purple bracelets. We spread awareness as far as what signs to look out for, how we can help. And we have another walk planned later this month, so stay tuned for that date and that location.
And we will be in Aqueduct. We'll be walking we'll be walking in Aqueduct and just spreading awareness and talking to people. We just wanted to have conversations and talking about healthy relationships and equal partnership and communication and establishing appropriate boundaries in your relationship. So it's going to be a candid time. Feel free to come out and ask us some questions. We'll be happy to talk with you.
That will be on the 23rd, Aqueduct, October 23rd. And again, one last thing about that. Listen, we've done everything this month but sleep. But we have unveiled some beautiful patrol cars and who are decorated in purple with the DV logo on it and just the phrase "enough is enough." So if you happen to see one of these gorgeous patrol cars out and about, honk your horn, say enough is enough, do something, and just that's really some of the things that we're doing for this month, just to bring awareness to this very important cause.
And we'd like to hear from you as well. If you have any suggestions on how we can spread awareness about domestic violence, we are fortunate to have our very own email address for the domestic violence team, and that's nnpddvteam@nnva.gov. Nisha and I were the only ones that man that email address, so the mail that comes to us, we'll review it and we'll be happy to get back with you. We also have a message line.
Correct, and that message line is 757-928-4646. Again, Cheryl and I are the only ones who man that line, so you are able to leave a message and a member of our team will get back to you within the next business day. I do say that if it's an emergency, please contact 911. Okay. Yeah. So why is DV so important to discuss?
Domestic violence is so important to discuss because honestly, there are mothers and fathers and children out there who their hearts are aching because their loved one is in an abusive situation and they don't know what to do. And so we want to make sure that we talk about it. The more we can talk about it, the more that we can help give someone hope. And we don't want to see anyone lose their life over domestic violence because it can be lethal. And oftentimes when we're talking with individuals, we're noticing that sometimes they might minimize or diminish the abuse that they may be experiencing. And we want people to be able to take this seriously. Nobody should have to experience the devastation that comes from a loss of losing a loved one to domestic violence. And no one should have to continue to live a life of trauma and terror. And that's why it's important to talk about it, because it affects everyone in the community.
Right.
Our children are impacted by it. One of the statistics we read is about 3 to 8 million children are impacted by domestic violence. So the numbers are staggering. And I think later on in our conversation, we could talk about the workplace
Right.
and how it's important to talk about domestic violence within our places of employment.
Right. And it's important to talk about it because it doesn't go away just because we don't talk about it. It's not something that if you ignore it and sweep it under the rug, then it's okay, it's not happening. It's still happening every single day, affecting countless individuals and families. It's happening to our teens. 1.5 million high school students in the U.S. experience domestic violence per year. So it's just really important to talk to our kids about it. It's important to talk to our neighbors about it. You can talk to your local grocery store cashier, the postman, anybody. We all know someone who has been impacted by domestic violence, even if you don't know that you know someone who has been impacted by domestic violence. It's one of those things where if we don't talk about it, it can't get better. It won't get better. And the people that we talk to on a daily basis that we're just so blessed to be able to offer that support to and that advocacy to, just to have a survivor say, I didn't know anyone cared. I know that when I was in my situation, I would have never thought that anyone, whether it was someone in the community, in a police department, anybody, cared. So we want people to know that they're not alone. And as Cheryl mentioned, that there is hope and that there is help and that it's all about planting the seed. We say that often. Domestic violence is not something that you can just fix in a day, usually. And we want to empower the families and the communities to say, if you can just plant the seed, if you can just give someone hope, even if they don't leave that day, or the next day, but maybe a week from now or 2 weeks from now, they can say, you know what, I remember that my neighbor told me I deserve better. I remember my neighbor gave me the number to a hotline, and I'm going to make that call today. So that's essentially why we do what we do, and working in this department is clear to them that it's important that the message gets out, and just seeing how passionate they are about fighting against domestic violence is really empowering as well, which is one of the reasons we did the 21st century policing conversation.
Yep.
Just to address, that for that very reason.
I will just say that there are people in our community who are suffering in silence. When we talk with victims, there's so many people, they're embarrassed. They're filled with shame. They're filled with guilt, and they feel like it's their fault. And so when we talk with them, we say, you know what, you don't deserve to be abused. You don't deserve to be put down. You don't deserve, there's nothing that you did that would warrant it. And so many people have a lot of self-blame. And so we feel like we can talk about it a little bit more, then maybe we can remove some of that shame, that guilt, that embarrassment that comes with it. And they may be able to come to you and say, you know what, I'm going through this.
Right.
I need some help. Can you help me? And you as a community member would be equipped with the strategies and the things that you can do to be able to help give somebody hope.
Yeah. I like to talk about the different types of domestic violence, like the different signs of it. Everything from digital financial abuse. I'll tackle financial abuse really quickly. It's prevalent in 99% of domestic violence cases. And it's a main factor in why people cannot just leave. If you think about it, if you had to just get up and leave and start your life over today with nothing but a duffel bag, could you do it?
And that's why you don't like when people say things like "just leave."
I do not like that.
Because
No.
it's not that easy.
It's not. Someone took your car keys, your wallet, and you were running for your life and had to start over, 9 times out of 10 you couldn't, especially if you have children,
Yeah.
if you have pets.
Mm-hmm.
Survivors have to think of things that the normal person wouldn't have to think about. Survivors have to think of things like parking backwards in the driveway so that if they have to run out and escape, they can just jump in their car and leave. Or if there's an argument, not running into rooms where there may be weapons like the kitchen or the bathroom. These are things you're constantly living in survival mode every single day, and you're walking on those eggshells, and it's really stressful. So if you have been abused financially, where your partner could either do things like prevent you from working or making it so that you lose jobs if they're causing disruptions by calling incessantly, showing up at your job, creating a disruption to the point where you lose your job. Maybe they make you turn over your paychecks every week or prevent you from working so you're not getting any income to where you're able to get a car or get an apartment in your name. They may do things like, on the flip side, not pay any bills in the household. So if you're covering all of the bills and then your credit is destroyed, then it would make it hard for you to be able to secure another place to live, because oftentimes property managers, landlords, things like that don't want to rent to you if you have a less than XYZ credit score.
Mhm.
Then there's digital abuse.
Yeah, so I'll talk about digital abuse because that is on the rise. This is where technology is used as a means of power and control. And so we have things like doxing, where someone will expose all of your personal information online. We guard our social security numbers and our personal IDs. We guard that information. So imagine it being exposed for the world to see. People using your email password and sending off emails to all of your friends, exposing maybe some personal correspondence that you had or pictures that you had taken that you were giving to your intimate partner, and that being exposed to everyone that you work with. That is a part of that digital abuse as well. And I'm thinking also breaking your cell phone. That's a big
Yes.
one that we see, preventing you from even having access to your phone. How many of us, if your phone was taken away and someone deleted all of your contacts, would you be able to just call the various people that you are familiar with, your friends and family? No, because we don't have those numbers necessarily saved up in our minds. They're all in our phones. So can you imagine someone just deleting all of your information, changing your passwords? I think I mentioned that as well, so that you don't even have access. There are many people now in this day of technology where we're social distancing. People are using Zoom to communicate and do their work. Imagine someone takes your laptop, your work laptop, and you can't even do any work. That's a form of digital abuse, where they're taking away the technology that you need in order to do the things that you regularly do, and that stuff is gone because now they're utilizing that to control you.
And to also keep track of you. We've seen where GPS is used, as placed in children's tablets and things like that, placed in cars or what have you, just to be able to keep track of the victim's whereabouts at all times. That's a very scary feeling, to have someone monitoring you and you don't know where they are and how often they're watching you. There's religious abuse.
Religious abuse is a big one, and talking about that financial abuse as well. Imagine you are, in the faith-based community, and part of the principles that you have to adhere to is returning your tithe and offering. And your spouse says, "Nope, you can't. I'm not allowing you to take that money to give to the church." But that is part of your core value, and you're being prevented from doing that. Spiritual abuse as well. You're afraid to come out and share with your congregation what's going on because your spouse may hold a high office within that faith-based community, and nobody would believe what you have to say because this individual presents as so upstanding and is so charismatic. And so that spiritual abuse is very difficult because you feel like if you expose the abuse, you might lose your faith-based community, which is who you surround yourself with. So that is also very difficult in dealing with spiritual abuse.
We have immigration abuse, those with, when you have a language barrier. Your partner may prevent you from learning English to be able to ask for help. Maybe withhold your passport or withhold your visa documentation, threaten to turn you in and have you deported. A lot of victims do not contact the police because they're afraid of being deported. That's in the Hispanic Latino community, that's Asian community, and just so on and so on. So if you're afraid of being deported and you have no family to help, you cannot really speak the language, that creates huge barriers in being able to get to safety.
That is so true. And there's another one where someone would prevent you from even getting your medicine that you need to live. Now imagine if you're a diabetic and you need your medicine, and that's being taken away from you. that is very difficult to deal with as well.
And with COVID, it's just made it that much more difficult for victims to leave. We've learned of instances where the partner's threatening to put the victim out, especially when COVID was at an all-time high. So now this person is afraid to leave the house. Maybe they'll make it so that they take their health insurance cards, so they can't go to the doctor if they're feeling sick or they want to get a checkup. You know, they're refusing even to let them use hand sanitizer and wear masks and things like that. And it's just these little forms of control that keep a victim in that place of feeling helpless and hopeless.
Yeah.
So what some people ask, what can I do to help someone who may be going through abuse? You know, how can I help someone? I'd say the first thing is to listen and not be judgmental in that listening. While you may not understand why a victim stays, it is that victim's choice. The victim is the expert in their own situation. And again, you would just have to respect their decision. So just to be able to listen, offer them resources, whether it's a local domestic violence agency in your area or the National Domestic Violence Hotline, just giving a phone number and saying, I care about you, I want to help you. You can say things that are empowering instead of things that are debilitating. So instead of saying things like, why don't you just leave? Maybe, I'm concerned for your safety. What are the barriers preventing you from getting to safety, and what can I do to help you overcome those barriers? You're essentially asking this person to leave the situation, but one is empowering and one is demeaning.
Yeah, and I think also providing resources is extremely important. We mentioned earlier how difficult it is to just get up and leave. And so if you're a friend of someone and maybe you might have some resources, they may need to be able to go to a hotel and you may be able to pay for that hotel or a flight for them to be with family or money to pay that first month's deposit and first month's rent. You may be able to provide those resources, help them get some furniture as they try to rebuild their life, or maybe babysit the children for a little while so that maybe that victim survivor can kind of clear their head and have some downtime. Whatever it is that you can do to be able to help someone, I think those are things that you can do that would be very beneficial.
Right. You could keep an emergency bag at your house, documenting things that you see, whether it's bruises or just things that don't seem right. We're a fan of emailing yourself or some sort of electronic documentation, because if you email yourself, then you have the date and time stamped. You know, just even if it's something small. I saw Mary at work and she had a bruise and it was this day and she said she fell down the steps, you know. Or I saw Jim, he's been isolated, he hasn't been responding to phone calls and things like that. Just make note of these little things that you see, because they can matter a great deal in the long run.
That's true. And even coming up with a code word.
Yes.
Between you and your friend. Okay, this is our code word. If you say this, I know that means either to call the police or come by and provide some type of assistance in a covert kind of way. That code word is also very essential to being able to help.
Yeah. So we invite you to ask any questions that you may have about domestic violence, you know, questions that you may have about the team or the work we're doing within the departments. We see some comments here. Miss Elizabeth Jones, my ladies, exclamation mark. I'm proud of you and so happy Newport News is taking the steps necessary. You should be a model for all of Hampton Roads. Thank you, Elizabeth. Elizabeth is one amazing survivor. She actually was featured in our PSA and was also one of the survivors who attended the Light Up DV event and has just been very supportive in this journey to providing assistance to the city of Newport News. So thank you, Elizabeth.
And Dana Robbins said, I love the video you put out, very helpful. I think that's referring to the Enough is Enough video. And then Annie Albaugh says, that does sound cool. And that, I think, is a relationship to us having a crime analyst.
Oh, see, it is cool. It is cool. It's pretty cool saying, oh, let me get my crime analyst, you know? It is part for this box activity for all of this beautiful, strong women's ministry church Oasis, the Newport News.
Yes.
Yes.
Marina, thank you so very much. I think we've been in contact with leaders at your church, and I think you guys are having your own box. And some communities, organizations have decided to just have their own box where people are able to bring different items to donate to transition. So we're really excited. Thank you so very much, Marina. We appreciate you.
Yes. And Cecilia Torres, thank you. You're welcome. Thank you. And Miss Annie, thank you for all you do. Thank you very much. And you're right, it is heartbreaking. But it's so many are going through it, and that's why we do what we do, because we don't want it to break the hearts of any more individuals or families going forward. And Miss Elizabeth Price says, I've been through a lot of this. Well, we applaud you, Miss Elizabeth, for just surviving, just you being here and watching this video and being transparent enough to even comment that you've gone through domestic violence. We just applaud you and thank you for your support as well.
We appreciate it. We can talk a little bit about workplaces.
Oh, yeah.
And how important it is, because many people just think that domestic violence is a family issue. Well, guess what? Oftentimes family issues bleeds into the workplace.
Right.
And so it's very important for employers and employees to be aware of domestic violence, because you may see some of the signs of domestic violence manifest in the workplace, where I think, Nisha, you mentioned it earlier, where a spouse or abuser may call incessantly.
Yes.
And so that victim survivor is not able to be as productive as possible at work. They may come and have bruises on them as well. And we firmly believe that every workplace needs to have a domestic violence protocol.
Right.
So that means, what are your standard operating procedures as it relates to domestic violence? If one of your employees is impacted by DV, what would you do to help address that?
Exactly. And it's important because, as Cheryl said, it bleeds into all facets of life. So some of the things to look out for if you have a colleague or an employee who is at work, and it's just some things that are changing a little bit with that person. If they're normally outgoing, but they have become isolated. If they're dressing where it's not appropriate for the season, so it's summertime, but they're wearing long sleeves and sweaters. If they're wearing sunglasses inside the building. And it's important as an employer to be able to have this policy so that if an employee is to come to you and say, I need help, that you're able to at least know what resources to offer to them in the community. And that's one of the initiatives that we're taking to reach out to businesses in this city to say, our domestic violence team would love to just talk to your leadership and your staff about domestic violence, the signs to look for. Maybe we can include it as part of your employee orientation program or just webinars throughout the year. As we mentioned earlier, domestic violence far extends past October 1st through October 31st. There are people going through this November 1st through September 30th as well. So however we can bring awareness, wherever we can bring awareness, that's what we'll do.
Yeah, and it's so interesting. I think Annie is mentioning in the comment section that she called 911 and she's worried that she may have made it worse for someone, and that is a concern that many people have. Like, if they say something, it might make it worse.
Right.
What would you say to that, Ms. Himes?
So there's ways to be an active bystander. And in reading that, you invited the young lady to step into your car. One, you have to make sure that when you're going to intervene into a domestic violence situation, that it is safe for you to do so as well. Because the same way it is the most dangerous call for officers, it is dangerous as civilians to step into a domestic situation. So a way to be an active bystander if something has happened publicly, whether it's in a store plaza area, maybe look for a security guard or the manager of a store, calling 911. Asking for assistance. There have been tips where you can just kind of yell out, hey, do you know what time it is? Just to cause a distraction, from that particular moment. So that's a really great question, Ms. Annie, because there's ways to intervene without intervening and putting yourself in danger. So if it's just someone that something is wrong, I would say not to approach it, by yourself. See if that you can do it in a group or with someone. See if you can grab someone. If you see an officer nearby, see a store manager or something along those lines, just to have that added support. But always contact 911 if you believe that someone is in danger.
And you can do that anonymously.
Yes.
Where you can call the police and just say, hey, can you do a welfare check I think something's going on with my neighbor. I just need someone to check on them. That's an opportunity for you to be able to intervene as well.
Yes. Oh, Cheryl, you got a comment. Someone misses you.
Hi, Miss Beavers. Good to see you, I guess.
I'm saying hi too.
Hey, Miss Beavers, you're awesome. Thank
Yes.
you for all that you do for the community of
Yes.
Newport News. We appreciate you and your family.
Yes. And Miss Annie, she's I meant on the verge of a physical. Okay. You're welcome, Miss Annie. Thank you.
Appreciate you. I'm trying to think. What else is there? We are so grateful to have our sergeant here with us in the Special Victims Unit. She is off camera, but she is providing much guidance and much support, and we're so grateful for her leadership. Is there anything else you can think of, Sarge, that we might need to touch on?
Not putting her on the spot.
Right, not at all. She wouldn't do that to you. Anything else that we can mention?
It's exciting to be a part of this endeavor as we look for a new way to address an old problem.
Mm.
And we cannot continue with the mindset that we'll just keep moving along doing what we've always done because it's proven ineffective. And so it's definitely occurs in our community, and therefore it's a community mission. So while we're happy to be at the forefront and using our voices, we encourage all of the community to use their voices. If you see something, say something, and it's never wrong to call 911. And as Ms. Javer said earlier, you can be anonymous if you don't want to directly get involved. But maybe that anonymous phone call to 911 is what makes the difference and saves a person's life.
Exactly.
That is a really good point. We've had, officers who go out for a call for service, and maybe the individual who's offending didn't do anything to necessarily be arrested, but that victim could use some additional support. And so we've had the opportunity to speak with victims and just listen to them and say, look, we care about you. We don't want anything to happen to you. How can we help you? Here's our contact information. Reach out to us. You need to vent. You need to process, because oftentimes being in a domestic violence relationship is a very lonely place to be, where nobody understands what you're going through. I mentioned that people are often living in suffering in silence. Mm-hmm. And so here's an avenue. Through your intervention, you may be calling the police and having a welfare check being done. We may be able to have a chance to reach out, or an officer reach out and provide that support that a victim may need. So we want to do whatever we can to be able to help save lives. That is the mission here, is to save lives. And we could talk about this topic for hours. We are very, very passionate about domestic violence and eradicating it.
And it doesn't just have to end here. We just invite you all to contact us via the contact information that we provided earlier. Whether you have a question about domestic violence, you want to know how to help a friend, maybe you're going through a situation that you're not sure is domestic violence and just want to seek some guidance. We're available. We're here for you. We're really easygoing, if you haven't seen that already. And we see a comment from Mr. Rawlinson. It's great that the Chief Drew brought this to NMPD. We agree, and we're really just grateful to be here, and do hope that this program does extend past this department, but to other agencies, not just statewide, but nationally and beyond. If we need to go take a flight somewhere, do some training, we'll do it. I'll go to Vegas if I have to.
We're definitely open to speaking whatever platform is necessary to address this issue. And Mr. Rawlinson, your voice is very powerful, sir. Hint, hint. Mr. Rawlinson does great work within the community, and we're grateful for him. And he is a strong advocate of the Newport News Police Department. So we appreciate you, sir. But yeah, we're willing to talk with anyone about domestic violence, because we just want to help. That is just the bottom line. We want to help, and we want to bring hope to people.
Yeah, and plant those seeds.
Yep. Seed of hope.
What do they say? You can plant a seed today, but it doesn't mean you'll see the flower the same day. It's corny, right? But it's what it means. You plant those seeds, and what it will bloom into later. Yeah. It's just amazing, and that's our job.
Plant seeds, because you never know which one will grow.
Correct. Oh, I like that.
Yeah. Teamwork.
Okay.
We just want to thank you all
Yes.
so very much for this opportunity. We want to say thank you to the City of Newport News leadership.
Yes.
Thank you to leadership here at the Newport News Police Department. They are phenomenal.
Mm-hmm.
They are really invested in our community and making sure that people are safe and have what they need to lead successful lives. And so we're grateful to be here as civilians in this department doing this incredible work. We do not take it lightly, and we're just grateful for the privilege. And we want to thank you as the community for your support, because what you
Yes.
do can definitely make a difference to change someone's life for the better.
Yes. Agreed. Drop the mic. Thank you so much for having us, and we look forward to seeing you on Saturday at our open mic, and just for all of the events that we have planned for October.
Thank you all.
Thank you.